Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be giving you guys a sneak preview of the blog post, which will be going live on my main blog on Monday, the 20th of May. This is for Mental Health May. If you don't already know me, you're just obviously clicking because of the title. Welcome. My real first name is Anna, but I prefer my middle name Ursula. I primarily talk about like books and writing, and I've been getting more into fountain pens and inks in the last like 6 months or so. Whatever. So obviously the main focus of my channel is not mental health, but I'm glad to have you guys along for the ride, even if it's just to watch this one video, because caring, sharing is caring, and particularly with mental health, we need to keep the conversation going and end the stigma and taboo against it. I've long been very open and honest about my struggles with various mental health challenges. So I was very happy, I guess, like maybe two years ago, 1 year, if I had to guess, to learn about the existence of Mental Health May. This month was established in 1949, and every year has a theme, which I did not know until I started doing a little bit more research for writing this blog post. The 2024 theme is Where to Start, and the 2023 theme was Look Around, Look Within. I don't know if they've been doing themes the entire time they've been in existence, or if this is just like fairly recent or when it started, but that's like really, really awesome. Like mental health isn't a one size fits all. Like many of us, like all of us, struggle with different types of mental health challenges, and sometimes even if we might have the same challenge, we like tackle it in different ways, or it was triggered because of different like things. So that's like really, really great. No one should be made to feel ashamed of mental health issues, either having them in general or struggling with them in particular. Being open about one's mental health journey can help others to feel more empowered and understand they're not the only ones facing such issues. Well, I don't base my entire identity on my issues like some other people, like in the younger generation, seem to be doing. They're nevertheless an integral part of who I am. I've probably spoken the most on my main blog about how I have cyclical depression, which has been triggered by various things over the years. Just to give a couple of examples off the top of my head, but this is no means an exhaustive list. Lockdown in 2020, the deaths of my maternal grandpap in 2017, being forced to move back to Pennsylvania my junior year of high school in August 1996. Yes, believe it or not, I am much older than I look, although most people don't guess my age anywhere close to 44. This is always functional depression, the type that can be masked fairly well. Even during my worst bout in 2017, when I practically lived in bed and I became like within spitting distance of morbid obesity, the hugest I have ever been in my life, even considering I've long, struggled on and off with like losing and gaining and regaining weight, and I had an inverted sleep cycle and barely left my apartment. I was still able to go out as needed and, put on fresh clothes and obviously like go within the apartment to use the bathroom and like make dinner or whatever in the kitchen. I was like, I can't believe I was blanking on that word, even though my inverted sleep cycle. So if you guys don't know, I fell into this by accident. Like I didn't really mean to do it. And suddenly I was just, like staying up later and later and later. And so I was basically going to bed at like 6, 7, 8 in the morning. And I would like wake up at like 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So basically I was having dinner at 3 o'clock in the morning and eating my breakfast when most people are just like coming home from work. I'm like a full-time writer, so I did have the luxury of being able to do that, but that's just really not good for my health, and I'm struggling again, like not nearly to that extent, thank God, with an inverted sleep cycle. So I definitely need to work like more consistently on getting to bed earlier, because I've unfortunately fallen into the habit of like staying up until like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I know that's not good, because when you stay up late, that means you also get up later, and that's just really not good for your health. You want to get into a good schedule, like learn to associate, I need to wake up at like 9 in the morning or whatever and have breakfast almost as soon as I get out of bed, instead of, I'm just going to get up at like 12 in the afternoon or 11 o'clock, or I'm going to wake up at like 10 o'clock, but I'm just not going to like start my day until close to noon. That's just really a horrible habit. No one should get into that. And obviously that's a mental health issue as well. I suspect the mechanism behind my cyclical depression was triggered by my experience with depression and being bullied in junior high. That experience also triggered other mental health issues, as I have come to realize, but didn't, you have the foggiest idea about until fairly recently, because that's, how depression and mental health issues can work. Sometimes you don't realize right away what's going on, even though you might think, I know this isn't a normal way I'm reacting to things, or the way I like have a non-reaction to things other people have a reaction to. I know deep down that it's kind of weird, like other people don't do that, but you don't understand the reasons, like why you're doing that or what might have caused that in the first place. Complex PTSD is one such condition. Traditional PTSD stems from a single traumatic experience, whereas CPTSD comes from an ongoing, prolonged traumatic experience or experiences. Well, I would never, ever, ever compare my experiences of being bullied to something much more dramatic like war or childhood abuse. It deeply impacted my mind, and in many ways, like, I'm still feeling the impact of it decades later. Maybe there are some ways it's impacted me that I'm still not, really fully aware of. During 8th grade, I began putting almost no spaces between words when writing, a habit continued to this day. When I began high school, I instinctively made myself more invisible and very introverted. I didn't want to risk trouble by saying things that might invite mockery and mistreatment all over again. This resulted in having no real friends or social life outside of school, with like a couple of exceptions. But I didn't think to care about that until my senior year of university. Protecting myself came first, and I was so, I guess, naive. I didn't realize how this came across to other people. And one of the main reasons I was bullied in junior high, our 7th grade English teacher, which I had at the 8th grade honors level. I never skipped any grades, but I was so good in English, like they basically skipped me and a bunch of other people in like 6th grade right into like 8th grade level English. So we never had 7th grade level English, which was awesome. And she was like asking us, oh, share something you like about yourself or you're proud about yourself. And I said, complete like naivete at 12 years old, I like that I'm ahead of my time. And when she asked what that means, I was like, again, like so naive, no understanding of how this came across to pretty much everyone else. Oh, I know about these things that my peers don't know. So when they're just like learning about something, I've already known about it for years. And I guess I really was proud of myself for being like reading 4 or 5 grade levels up and just knowing a lot of stuff other kids in my classes didn't like care to know about. But it just sounded like I was this like chutzpahdik, like horrible person, like saying, oh, I'm so much better than you because I know things you don't and I'm so much smarter. But I genuinely had no idea how that came across in them. Other main reason I was bullied, this was again in like 1992, and in the 7th grade, this one boy, Bruce, who later became a genuine friend of mine and wasn't a bully for like, my entire experience. He asked me what I thought of, and he used a slur for gay people. It starts with the letter F and has the 3 letters, not the full form, like 6-letter F word. That's a homophobic slur. And I innocently asked what that means, and he said, gay people. And I said, oh, they're just like other like gays and lesbians are just like any other people except for like their like sexual orientation. And this was like obviously way before like rainbow capitalism and all that stuff, like back when like it was not cool for straight people to be like LGBT allies. And so they thought, oh, only a lesbian could say something like that and stand up for gay people, so I must be a lesbian too, even though I've always been straight. So they began bullying me because they thought I was a lesbian. And it's like I tried to tell them, no, I'm not, I only like boys. And they just kept bullying me for this. But I do not regret standing up for like gays and lesbians back when almost no straight people were willing to do that. So obviously I was ahead of my time again. But obviously I'm not saying that to like pat myself on the back. It's just like a part of who I am, and that's why I was bullied. I did not realize saying either of those things could get me into trouble. So I would just like to show you guys proof of what I was saying about that writing becoming squeezed together. This is the first entry in my journal, Cecilia, on October 4th, 1993. I was a few months before I turned 14. I was in the 8th grade. To this day, she remains like the journal I felt like most emotionally close to because she was with me during the bullying in junior high. And you can see that's a little bit of salad oil that leaked onto the edge of the pages. In 1995, I was keeping her in my locker because my parents didn't like me writing all the time. That's a really long story, like for another post. So anyway, it doesn't really matter what I was writing, but just you can see the spaces between the words. That's pretty normal. And I guess it's like continuing on here. Let's see, let's get to what date is this. I'm trying to find a page with a date on the top just for comparison. So anyway, you can see probably it's like getting squeezed closer and closer together, and that's obviously there are more spaces because it's on the cardboard in between. So okay, June 5th, 1994, and so you can see by this point, look how much closer than the words have been squeezed together. That's pretty much like, I mean, it never looks cramped to me. I I can read my own writing. Obviously, that's just, how I've always been writing all these years, but it's just like most people, they put more spaces between their words. I just like squeeze them closer and closer together. And by the end of Cecilia, and December of 1994, I think this was, or was it early 95? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was this is December 94. Look how squeezed together that is. So basically, that's what, being bullied did to me, like almost no spaces at all between my words, and thinking, that was like how I was supposed to write, and just unable to get out of that mindset even like decades later. There's always an end to the darkest night of the soul, and I'm very proud to say I've not thought about taking such the drastic, unnecessary step of throwing my entire book of life onto the fire for 30 years now. The kind of depression I have isn't the suicidal type, thank God. People who have never had actual clinical depression don't understand what triggers it, how it manifests, and why it just can't magically go away with better friends, taking walks, exercise, fresh air, yoga, like woo-woo like that. That's not how mental health disorders work. And like shortly after I came to South Carolina in 2017, these people I met at religious services on Saturday, I was basically mentioning, I guess the topic came up, I had been, depressed, was dealing with that, had just gotten over it, or whatever was, or whatever we were talking about. I guess the details aren't important. Like one person, or maybe a few people, asked in confusion, like, why would you be depressed? Because in their minds, they only think, oh, people only get depressed if they lose a loved one, or they, get divorced or something like that. They don't understand, things can trigger it besides like a situational depression. Like you're not in my mind, you're not in anyone else's mind. How dare you say, oh, why would you get depressed? Or you shouldn't get depressed unless you, like your parents or your best friend or your husband, wife, whatever, has died, or you survived a car accident, or something else really bad happened to you. No, like how dare you? That's just, I just don't understand why people think like that. And also, I really hate people who deny the existence of mental health conditions altogether. I'm not going to name names, but like if you're like following me on Twitter, I guess you've seen some of my tweets talking about this, or just like in general, if you're aware of these issues, and they act like, oh, mental health issues, it's all due to trauma, particularly in women, and they're just like misdiagnosing trauma. And mental health issues really do exist. There are actual ways of diagnosing and treating them. These people, I just hate mental health woo. To this day, I believe down to the very core of my soul that my love for the Beatles saved my life in 8th grade. I might have taken my own life otherwise. Even though they're no longer my favorite band, I still consider them the musical love of my life. And one of the other darkest times of my soul was my junior year of high school. My family moved back to Pennsylvania. It was just a total, cluster what of a year. I went into this small rural school system. They didn't really understand or know what to do with someone who came from a much more advanced system. No, I never went to like a prep school. I wasn't, that rich, or that my parents couldn't do like, scholarships or whatever. But, I came from a school where I was like learning much more advanced things, and they just like stuck me in an English, so-called English class. Half the year was learning to write research papers with 11th graders who had never done that before. I'd been doing it since 8th grade, like seriously. And the second half was a public speaking communication class, so I never like read any world literature or Shakespeare or anything like that. Like I'd been looking forward to doing my junior year, and I was forced to take for my second language class a French 1 class instead of Latin, which I'd been really, really looking forward to. In my Spanish class, so that was a whole other story too. I was put in Spanish 4 with mostly seniors and a couple of other juniors who had transferred from schools that started Spanish earlier. So this was my my fifth year of Spanish. I'd started in 7th grade, so 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And so like I had like senior year to go, and like I knew a lot of the things I knew in Spanish and had learned a couple of years ago. These seniors in their last year of Spanish were just learning for the first time. Like WTF, I could do a whole rant about that school system. But anyway, I was really, really depressed that my junior year of high school. But I think, well, I never had suicidal thoughts. Like maybe looking back, I guess I was saved from having any thoughts like that. And like I obviously knew at the time, and still to this day, my spirits were kept up because, every Saturday morning at 11:30 on AMC, when they still showed classic movies, and before I was Shabbos observant, I would watch Laurel and Hardy shorts, and sometimes during the rest of the week they would show them too. So like my Clown Prince angels, I really, really owe so much to them. Just like a really beautiful, emotional bond. They really, really helped me when my depression was like so low and I was in such a dark place. So that's always a good thing to remember. Of course, like medication and therapy are very, very important too, but there are also things you can do outside of that that, help you. Think of things that might, distract you or whatever, or something you like that might help your depression a little bit non-medically. For example, oh, your favorite comedians like Laurel and Hardy, or your favorite band, or doing art, or just something like that. So there are, ways to help, but of course, like obviously medication and therapy are the most important ways. Like you should never try to cure serious mental health issues just by, watching movies or listening to music. Like I was just ranting, like yoga and exercise and friends, they don't cure serious mental health issues. I've long thought I'm just naturally not very touchy-feely and emotional because my family is rather buttoned up. We do not have this warm, close-knit, lovey-dovey relationship I see other people doing or see in like the movies and like read about in books. Like, these Victorians are constantly like kissing their parents every time that one of them leaves the house or comes home, or when they go to bed. Like, ew, like, well, that is not how I have ever related with my parents. Like, seriously, I could not imagine doing that unless I were having a complete break from reality. My parents would wonder what was up if I hugged and kissed them. People in our family just don't display a physical affection under typical circumstances, and that's another reason, like, I hate the mommykins worship in Dr. Beatrice Sparks's books. Like, she has all these teenagers constantly declaring their wub for their precious, precious, precious mommies. Oh, I have a whole new series of like videos coming up on like her like fraudulent garbage. However, I've been coming to realize that attribute might not just be because of my family's nature, but a type of non-pathological dissociation and the freeze response, also triggered by my junior high experience. And there are now currently like four main trauma responses besides the classic flight and fight. There are also now freeze and fawn. And I also just saw the other day when I was doing some research and gathering images for this blog post, there's also now the flop response. And I realize I mostly do the freeze response, which basically you have like difficulty making decisions. You feel like stuck, dissociating, isolating, numb. You just like freeze in place. You kind of like check out of yourself. Oh, this isn't really happening, or it can't really be that bad. Can we get on with normal life now? And it's not because you're heartless and unfeeling, or you're God forbid a sociopath or anything like that. It's just because that's the response you have learned to like protect yourself and do like a coping mechanism. Dissociation disorders seem to be the most demonized and misunderstood mental health issues, particularly DID, dissociative identity disorder, also called by like some older people or who just have like a different way of referring to it, a multiple personalities disorder. Real DID, not the kind all these like clowns on TikTok and YouTube are faking for attention with their little meet all my alters videos. Oh, and what a surprise, how convenient. All 12 of them appear on camera, on cue, in full makeup and costume and character. Like, that's not how real DID works, and that disorder is so rare, caused by such like profound trauma, and often almost always not diagnosed or even like understood you're having it until you're in your 30s. So like these clowns like, on their 20s and teens, it really angers me that they're faking not just like DID but like Tourette's and other issues, or they're self-diagnosing a bunch of mental disorders they're collecting. But oh, this is fun and cool. Oh, I have this and I have that and I have all these 10 disorders. Oh, and it's fun and something awesome to have, and like a cool badge of honor, and all the cool kids have these disorders. And like I that's a whole rant for another thing. But it's like, if you seriously really suffer from a legitimate like mental health disorder, you're not like bragging about it or thinking it's fun and cool. It's actually seriously impacting your life, even during the periods, like thankfully for myself now it's like pretty much under control. So anyway, as I was saying before I got off on that little rant, real DID is caused by absolutely soul-shattering trauma from a very young age, persisting for years and often perpetrated by a parent or other caregiver. The trauma is so severe, the brain splits from itself as a kind of self-defense mechanism. So this isn't something caused by a one-off traumatic experience, like God forbid, like rape, or like seeing something bad, or like someone mugged you or tried to kill you, or just a horrible car accident. That would just cause I know that's like a bad choice of word, but that would in comparison to DID, just I guess is a correct word, it would cause like PTSD or complex PTSD. It would not cause actual DID. And I hate these like clowns faking mental disorders and like physical health issues just for like clicks and laughs and like followers and likes and stuff. I thankfully have a non-pathological type of dissociation, which I only became aware of over the past year. Because of the nature of dissociation, pathological or not, actual sufferers often don't start figuring it out until they're in their 30s or older. And I know I definitely do not have a disorder for like pathological kind of dissociation, because I do not meet any of the criteria for any of the, I believe there's like 4 or 5 dissociation disorders besides like the really, really horrible one of DID. I just have the kind of non-pathological dissociation many people have. Like, for example, daydreaming is another type of dissociation, or just like checking out of yourself is like a self-protective like, coping mechanism you learned a long time ago, and your brain just gets the signal, oh, incoming traumatic stimulus, I'm seeing something terrible happening on television, or reading about it, or like seeing it in person or something, and or my whoever died, and that's a terrible thing, but I'm going to protect my person by like blocking out the stimulus and like making the person feel, oh, nothing is really bad, it's not horrible like that, I can just like go on with my life, and I'm just like going to repress or suppress the thing I am doing. I didn't expect to have such intense physical reactions while watching the very, very wonderful, I highly recommend it, 6-part Nat Geo series 9/11 One Day in America last year, and on June and July I believe I was watching it, particularly since I did not react that way at all when it happened. And that's obviously, if I ever do a story time series, that would be one of the topics to talk about, my 9/11 experience. Slowly but surely, I figured out my brain is wired to involuntarily, unknowingly repress trauma as a self-protective coping mechanism. After what happened in junior high, I couldn't let myself feel such trauma ever again. And when my uncle passed away in a car accident on St. Patrick's Day, 1988, when I was 8 years old, I didn't find out about it till my mother got home from the funeral, and that really like affected my mind. And I kind of, for many, many years, I did not want to, think about him. Like when I saw his pictures, I would immediately like look away or like put the pictures away. I didn't want to speak his name or hear his name. It was just such an awful thing to me, and I couldn't even cry for him for 15 years until I was lying in my hospital bed after my first surgery during my first hospital stay in August of 2003. I was thinking about how I'm down to the very core of my soul. I've like been convinced ever since then he was watching over me, and that's the reason I was not killed when I was run over by a car. And I like finally my emotions just like finally had a release. They came like surging out, and we do know stress and trauma live in the body. So even if we're not immediately reacting in the here and now, we're thinking, oh, this didn't affect me, or yeah, this is sad, but I'm just not crying for it for whatever reason, and I feel bad I'm not crying for it, because like many times I have felt bad, like, oh, I know this was a horrible thing, why can't I feel more emotional about it, or why didn't I cry when it happened, why did I wait so long to cry about a death of this person or a tragic news event or something. So sometimes like something later on triggers the response. For example, we're reading about it again, or we're reminded of that person, and it just clicks, and all the stress just comes out in this intense physical reaction, or we're finally able to cry for that person whose loss we just couldn't mourn in the way we felt. And I do believe like I've been like forgiven. Obviously I know I shouldn't feel like I need to be forgiven, because like I have no control over this is how my brain is wired. But on Yom Kippur I was like asking for forgiveness for the fact that I like dissociated after 9/11 in such a like profound way. And I do believe obviously Hashem forgave me. I'm just having a hard time forgiving myself, and that's like a lifelong process I'm going to have to go through. But it's just part of the reality of living with like any kind of dissociation, like whether it's a relatively, I wouldn't say like harmless, I'm blanking on a word, like benign or whatever, just like some kind of word, like not as serious, I'm trying to say, as like actual pathological disorder type. But it's just something I have to live with throughout my whole life, and maybe I will hopefully find some other ways to not dissociate so much now that I know what's going on. And just like, well, obviously that's a whole topic for its whole other video. This explains why I've always been able to read books and watch films about so many dark, depressing historical events without breaking down emotionally. That might make me sound like an unfeeling, soulless, heartless monster, or maybe some people might think that's a blessing in disguise, particularly because I do a lot of historical fiction. I have to do research about things like, the Holocaust, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Armenian genocide, like Chinese foot binding, things like that, without, breaking down. I can just like read all these books and watch all these films, although I do have to say, besides the 9/11 research I was doing over the past year, the only other thing that really, really like affected me and gave me physical reactions was the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I do have a previous video in my book review playlist about the book Nagasaki Life After Nuclear War. If you want to know my views on the bombings and just like historical information on that in general, you can check that video out. But anyway, this is an unconscious automatic trauma response controlled by a part of the brain we may never fully understand. So let me know down in the comment if you guys have any mental health struggles, like what they are. Like, you don't have to get too detailed about them. I haven't gotten into any detail myself. I'm very blunt and a straight shooting type of person. I have a very like working class, like more stereotypically male way of speaking. I've always been very tomboyish, but I don't believe in oversharing. Just like in general, this is what happened, or stuff like that. So let me know like what particular mental health issues you have had, like if you got diagnosed when you were younger or older, or if you've chosen to take medication or not. I personally have never taken any medication for my depression. I know it might probably really help me with a cyclical depression. I'm just worried about like messing with the brain chemistry, but maybe like the right kind of medication would be really helpful. And how long did it take you to work out what was going on? Have you like gotten it under control, or is it something that flares up periodically? So just let me know. Or if you have known about mentalhealthmay for a long time, or this is just your first time like hearing about it, so just let me know down in the comments. I really enjoy having conversations with you guys, and I will see you in my next video very shortly. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.